Molly disappeared before the doorbell finished ringing. She had been resting on the back of the sofa, tail draped over the cushion, eyes half closed in the thin afternoon light. The house was quiet, steady, predictable. Eleanor was in the kitchen preparing tea, moving slowly but confidently through her routine. Nothing in the room had shifted, nothing had fallen, nothing had made a sharp sound. And yet Molly reacted as if something had already crossed the threshold. The first ring of the bell had barely vibrated through the hallway when she lifted her head. Her ears angled forward, then flattened slightly. She did not look toward the door, she looked toward the floor, toward the narrow space beneath the sideboard near the entrance. The second ring never finished. Molly jumped down, not with panic but with decision. She crossed the living room low to the ground, paused silent, body stretched in a straight line of intent. She did not hesitate. She slid under the sideboard and pressed herself against the wall, eyes wide, unblinking, fixed on the thin strip of light beneath the front door. Eleanor called her name casually from the kitchen, unaware of the speed of the retreat. She assumed Molly had gone to the window or toward the bedroom. The doorbell rang again. Eleanor wiped her hands on a towel and walked slowly to answer. When she opened the door, a neighbor stood there, a man she had spoken to twice before in the hallway. He carried a small package that had been delivered to the wrong apartment. He smiled politely. Eleanor invited him in for a moment, while she looked for something to offer in return, a gesture of courtesy she considered necessary. Under the sideboard, Molly did not blink. The man stepped inside. His shoes crossed the threshold, the door closed. Molly did not move toward the sound of Eleanor's voice. She did not reposition to observe from a distance. She did not wait to evaluate. She remained pressed flat, muscles tight, tail curled close to her body, eyes fixed on the narrow gap under the door, as if something had already passed through it. The visit lasted less than 15 minutes. The man explained the delivery mistake. Eleanor thanked him warmly. She moved toward the kitchen to retrieve a small tin of cookies she kept for occasions like this. The conversation remained polite and light. He glanced around the apartment once, commenting on how cozy it felt. Eleanor smiled and apologized for the mess, though nothing was out of place. Under the sideboard, Molly did not shift position. Normally, even during brief visits, Molly would observe from a distance. She might retreat to the bedroom, but she always returned to inspect the hallway once the voices settled. This time her breathing remained shallow. Her ears flicked at each movement of the man's shoes against the wooden floor. At one point, the man stepped closer to the living room, adjusting his jacket. His shadow stretched toward the sideboard. Molly's body flattened further, her whiskers pressed back against her cheeks. Eleanor noticed the absence then. She mentioned that Molly was shy with strangers and laughed lightly. She called out again, her voice soft, inviting. There was no response. She walked toward the bedroom to check under the bed, assuming Molly had retreated there instead. Molly did not respond to the call. The man assured Eleanor it was normal for cats to hide. He mentioned he had grown up with animals. He said they always sensed when someone new entered a space. Eleanor nodded, accepting the explanation as harmless. When the man prepared to leave, he stepped toward the door, paused briefly as if remembering something, and adjusted his bag on his shoulder. His gaze moved once more across the room. Then he opened the door and stepped into the hallway. The door closed firmly behind him. Silence returned. Eleanor locked the door, carried the empty teacup back to the kitchen, and began rinsing it in the sink. The house resumed its ordinary sounds: water running, cabinets closing, the faint hum of the refrigerator. Still, Molly did not come out. 10 minutes passed. Eleanor walked back into the hallway and knelt carefully beside the sideboard. She called Molly again, her tone patient, almost amused. When she leaned down to look underneath, she found two green eyes staring back at her, unblinking, pupils wide despite the bright afternoon light. Molly did not respond to the familiar voice. She did not stretch toward Eleanor's hand. Instead, when Eleanor reached in to coax her gently, Molly shifted deeper, claws scraping lightly against the wood. Eleanor withdrew her hand, surprised. Molly had never refused contact after a visitor left. She assumed the reaction was delayed fear. She stood slowly, joints stiff, and decided to give the cat time. An hour passed. The light outside dimmed slightly as clouds moved in. Eleanor prepared dinner, setting a small dish of food in Molly's usual corner. She called again, softer this time. Molly emerged only halfway. She stepped out slowly, body low, eyes scanning the hallway. Her movements were deliberate, cautious. She sniffed the air near the door, then near the rug, then near the lower edge of the coat rack where the visitor's jacket had brushed. She did not eat. Instead, she approached the door and sat directly in front of it, staring at the bottom edge where wood met floor. Eleanor watched from the kitchen, confused. She assumed Molly expected the man to return. She laughed quietly and said she was being dramatic. She moved toward the door and tapped it lightly, demonstrating that nothing was there. Molly did not flinch. Instead, she stood up, placed one paw against the door and pressed. It was not scratching, it was pressure. As if testing resistance. Eleanor gently lifted Molly away and carried her toward the living room. Molly twisted slightly in her arms, not in aggression but in urgency. Once set down, she immediately walked back to the door and resumed her watch. Night approached. Eleanor grew tired of the fixation. She closed the curtains, turned off the hallway light, and encouraged Molly toward the bedroom. Molly did not follow. She remained by the door long after the apartment fell quiet. If you want to keep following the stories of Molly and Eleanor, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps these stories keep being told. By the next morning, the intensity appeared to fade. Molly was no longer stationed at the door. She had moved to the window where she sat observing the street below. When Eleanor woke and shuffled into the kitchen, Molly followed at a short distance. She ate half her breakfast. She groomed briefly on the rug. The house felt normal again. Eleanor convinced herself the previous afternoon had simply unsettled her. The visitor had been unexpected. The interruption of routine had been enough to trigger a prolonged reaction, nothing more. To reinforce the return to normal, Eleanor vacuumed the hallway, cleaning the area near the door where Molly had been focused. She wiped the handle, adjusted the mat, and even opened the door briefly to let fresh air in. Molly did not retreat this time. She stood several feet away, watching but not hiding. Eleanor interpreted that as progress. In the afternoon, she decided to step out briefly to buy groceries. Before leaving, she bent down and stroked Molly's back. The fur lay smooth under her hand. Molly did not resist. Eleanor locked the door behind her and walked slowly down the corridor. Inside the apartment, silence settled once more. For several minutes, Molly remained still. Then she moved. She approached the door again, not with panic, but with renewed focus. She sniffed along the lower seam. Her whiskers brushed against a narrow line between the doorframe and the wall. She paused. Her nose pressed against a specific corner near the hinge. She began to scratch, not wildly, not in fear, but precisely at that corner. The scratching continued for several minutes, claws tapping against wood, then sliding down the frame. Molly paused, sniffed again, and pressed her face closer to the edge of the door. Nothing visible changed. The apartment remained quiet. When Eleanor returned with groceries, she found Molly sitting calmly near the kitchen, as if nothing unusual had occurred. The routine resumed. The problem seemed finished. The first sign came after midnight. Eleanor had gone to bed early. The apartment was dark, curtains drawn, hallway silent. Molly lay near the bedroom entrance, not fully inside, not fully outside, positioned where she could see the corridor. A faint sound broke the silence. It was not loud enough to wake Eleanor. It was a soft, irregular click near the front door. Molly's head lifted instantly. She did not hesitate this time, she ran. Her paws struck the wooden floor sharply as she reached the hallway. She positioned herself in front of the door, body angled sideways, ears forward, tail rigid. The clicking came again. A subtle pressure against the handle. Molly leapt upward, claws extended, gripping the fabric hanging from the coat rack beside the door. Her body collided with the door as she pushed off, creating a loud thud that echoed through the apartment. Eleanor woke abruptly. She called Molly's name, confused by the noise. Molly did not respond. She remained fixed on the handle, watching it shift slightly downward. Someone was testing it. The handle pressed once more. The door did not open, but the sound was unmistakable. Eleanor, still disoriented, sat up in bed. She assumed Molly had knocked something over. She began to stand. In the hallway, Molly jumped again, this time striking the handle directly with her body. The impact caused the latch to rattle loudly. The noise reached Eleanor clearly now. She froze. The handle moved again, slower, more deliberate. Eleanor did not move toward it. Instead, she reached for the phone beside her bed. In the hallway, Molly changed strategy. She dropped to the floor and began scratching intensely at the exact corner she had focused on earlier in the day, near the hinge side of the frame. Her claws dug into the small gap where wood met wall. She pulled at it repeatedly, as if trying to widen it. The handle stopped moving. Silence returned. Seconds passed. Then footsteps retreated down the corridor outside. Eleanor remained still, listening. Molly did not relax. She continued scratching until a small splinter of wood loosened from the frame. Beneath it, a thin strip of adhesive tape became visible, partially detached. Eleanor approached cautiously, staying several feet behind. Molly pulled at the tape with her teeth, dragging it free. Attached to it was a small folded piece of plastic, wedged into the narrow space between door and frame. A shim, inserted earlier during the visit. Eleanor stared at it, understanding slowly. The earlier visit had not been random courtesy. The pause near the door, the adjustment of the bag, the brief shadow near the hinge. Molly had detected the alteration immediately. The shim had prevented the latch from fully settling into place, allowing the handle to be manipulated from outside with minimal resistance. Molly had smelled the disturbance in the wood. She had felt the subtle change in tension, and she had refused to return to routine. If you want to keep following the stories of Molly and Eleanor, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps these stories keep being told. Eleanor picked up the plastic piece with trembling hands. It was small, almost invisible against the doorframe. If Molly had not removed it, the latch might have failed completely under enough pressure. The visitor could have entered quietly. Eleanor moved toward the door slowly and tested the handle from inside. Without the shim, it felt secure, solid. But the attempt had already occurred. Someone had returned. The cost was immediate. Eleanor did not sleep again that night. She called the building manager at dawn and reported the incident. The hallway camera footage was requested. The police were notified. The neighbor's identity was verified and then questioned. The apartment door was reinforced later that day with an additional lock. Through all of it, Molly remained near the hallway, watching every movement around the entrance. She did not hide anymore. She positioned herself openly, ears alert, body steady. In the weeks that followed, routine changed. Eleanor no longer opened the door without verifying through the camera installed above it. Packages were left downstairs. Conversations occurred through the closed door when necessary. Molly resumed her usual places by the window and the sofa, but each evening, as the light faded, she relocated to the hallway, not in fear, in position. Eleanor stopped dismissing sudden behavior as overreaction. When Molly moved, Eleanor paid attention. The apartment felt different now, not unsafe but aware. The visitor never returned. The door remained closed. And Molly no longer hid when the bell rang. She stood between the sound and the house, waiting. If you want to keep following the stories of Molly and Eleanor, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps these stories keep being told.